1. About a year ago, I got a text from an unknown number asking if this was my number, claiming to be Chris from high school. This isn't his real name, but I'll get into why I'm calling him Chris later. Anyway, the only Chris I really knew in high school was a really good friend of mine who, despite not going to the school I was in a friend group with me outside of school. The lot of us were so inseparable that we even had a little private site to keep in touch. Naturally, I was excited to see that he was trying to reach out to me and possibly try and connect again, so I confirmed that it was me. This would later bite me in the ass. While he was the one who usually initiated the conversations, we would have conversations via text once he did. One day, he said that he had gotten me some keychains of ghost-type Pokemon at our city's yearly anime convention, which is my favorite Pokemon type of them all. I was surprised that he was still going to cons, since back in high school we would either go with at least 4 people in our group or not go at all, but I figured that he might have found another group or was just stuck in the past. He said at some point in the future he wanted to give them to me in person. However, I never could find any room in my schedule for us to meet up. That, and for some reason, I was really nervous. I had a crush on Chris back then, so that might be a factor. I was and still am a bit shy, so that might have been why. Or it might have been because my gut was telling me that something was wrong. Fast forward to around the time the Sonic movie came out. I got a text from Chris asking me if I wanted to see it with him. Since I had heard surprisingly good things about it, and the fact that I'm gamer trash, I agreed. But then the same feeling popped up again. It was as if I didn't want to go alone with him. So, deciding to act on it, I told him that I was going to invite my friends and introduce him. Half because I wanted to be safe, and half because I also was truthfully wanting to introduce some of my current friends to one of the friends in my former friend group. However, once I told him that, something about his text saying, "Oh, okay," seemed like he was kind of disappointed. Fortunately, one of my current friends, who I'll call John, was free the day Chris and I agreed to go. So now I was definitely feeling better. Now to the day of the movie. I arrived looking for the Chris I knew at the theater. I knew that he would look different, but that I would recognize him regardless. However, I couldn't find who I was looking for anywhere. I texted him asking where he was, and I got a reply saying that he was outside the theater. And so I excitedly went outside, only to see someone who wasn't the Chris I knew. He looked familiar, sure, but he definitely wasn't who I was convinced it was. It was then that I realized that I royally fucked up. Memories of this Chris came back. He went to my high school, but we were just acquaintances. We would talk about games and stuff occasionally, and I would see him at the anime club in our school. But we weren't exactly close during that time. What I remembered the most is that he would always wear this faded Babom t-shirt, and looked and sounded like he hadn't gone through puberty throughout the entirety of his life. Now is the moment I explain why I decided to call him Chris, which will also paint a picture of what he looks like. He looks so much like Chris from Family Guy that if there were ever to be a live-action remake, he'd get the part immediately. The most amazing thing about this was that he looked practically the same as he did in high school, save for a literal neckbeard. It was as if he had found the Mountain Dew of youth or something. And the craziest thing, he still had that same Babom shirt, which would make it over a decade old now. And I didn't know how long he had it beforehand. I instantly tried to think of any possible explanation. He was a fellow gaming nerd like me, so maybe it was coincidence, maybe I was wrong. As soon as he saw me, he lit up and came on over to me. Maybe he was wanting to say hi since he hadn't seen me for a while. He dug into his red jacket and fished out 2 keychains of, you guessed it, ghost-type Pokemon.
"It's a bit overdue, but here you go."
Well, I might have been expecting someone else, but he was kind of a friend. Maybe this'll work out. Yeah, I accepted the keychains with a thank you, then realized something horrifying. How in the fuck did he get my phone number in the first place? It was then that I began to look for the friend I had invited. I did not want to be alone with this guy right now. Fortunately, John arrived about 2 minutes later. It was now time for the movie. For those who haven't seen the Sonic movie, it was actually pretty good. Not the best, but definitely not what I was expecting from something featuring Sonic, as the franchise hasn't had a good amount of games recently. After the movie, John had to leave since he was getting a ride with someone else. So now I was stuck with Chris. Nope, nuh-uh. I was about to put in a request for an Uber. I medically can't drive due to epilepsy, so I have to rely on others to get from point A to B, when Chris spoke up.
You're not spending any money on a ride while I'm here. I'll get you home.
This was when I stopped to think, maybe I was being overly critical. Maybe I spent too much time reading stories about neckbeards. After all, he seemed nice enough. Maybe I gave him my number sometime in high school and forgot. Besides, if he tried anything, my phone had tracking enabled, and my mom was extremely protective when it came to me. Well, he wasn't the one driving, apparently. Chris told me that his dad was going to take us home. Once again, I scolded myself for even considering him doing something weird, and relaxed a little bit. We talked a bit until his dad arrived, which was honestly really nice. But I still wasn't going to openly reveal my address, so I typed it into Google Maps, and I was finally in the home stretch. The ride home was uneventful, honestly. We talked a bit more, but that was about it. Finally, we arrived at my house, I said my goodbyes, and before I could open the door, Chris rushed out of his side to open it for me. Weird, but what he said next made me laugh. As soon as he opened the door, I shit you not, he literally said, "Milady," as he gestured outwards. This caused me to bust out laughing because I honestly thought he was joking with me. But when I did, he looked genuinely confused. Weird, but okay. Once I got to my house, I fished around for my keys since my mom wasn't home from her friends yet. Unfortunately, I forgot something very important. A few weeks ago then, I had went to Bali. My mom gave my house key to my neighbors so that they could put our mail and stuff inside our house. So as of right now, I was locked out. Seeing that I hadn't gone inside my house yet, I heard Chrissy's dad say from the car, "Get out there and be with her." This was enough for Chris to be encouraged to meet up with me on the porch while I was texting my mom the situation. When I got a response saying that she would be there in about 10 minutes, I explained that everything was fine and that he could go. Nope. He insisted on waiting with me because it was cold out, so now, despite me saying I was okay, he was going to wait with me. So I made myself comfortable on the porch swing, which was hard since he was making me extremely uneasy. It was then he draped his jacket over my shoulders in order for me to not be cold. Please note, I'm wearing a very heavy-duty fluffy jacket that made the temperature seem like it was 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I told him so, but he once again insisted. It was now that both the cringe and creep level was steadily rising. I was now in a bad rom-com. Great. And then it reaches the pinnacle. He slowly moved closer to me, leaned on my shoulder, and sighed dreamily. I then heard the words that are branded into my brain. "I love you." What the fuck? I barely knew the guy in school. We hadn't seen each other since 2011. And he just said that he loves me. I then saw my saving grace in the distance, my mom. This gave me the excuse to hand him back his jacket, get up, and wait by the front door. After my mom arrived and dragged my suffering on by chatting with Chris a little bit, we said our goodbyes and I rushed inside. Since then, I haven't really talked to Chris aside from one-word answers to texts rather than conversations. In hindsight, I think he planned for this entire thing to be a date between us, which was why he was so disappointed when I said I was going to see if my friends wanted to come. I'm grateful for John for being able to come, to say the least. I've had some extremely minor encounters with neckbeards, but this one is definitely one of the ones that I'll never erase from my mind. Update. After replying to a comment about how he got my number, I remembered that I had emailed one of my best friends about the situation. They were both in classes together, and I decided to ask if, at some point, she gave my number to him back then or recently. She replied saying that she didn't even have my number due to a phone change, and that even if she did, she wouldn't just give it out like that. When I told her what happened, she told me that Chris did the exact same thing in terms of giving her gifts and being clingy. She explained that he was really insistent on her accepting the gifts, and that what happened to me sounded similar to what happened to her. This got me thinking, which led me to this conclusion. In school, my friend and I both vaguely looked like each other. However, I'm a brunette and she's a blonde with shorter hair than mine. Our personalities were also really different, with me being more confident while she was shy. Despite this, we look alike in specific ways. So either Chris was using me as a second option for my friend, or my friend was a second option for me back in high school. I might be overthinking, but when you hear all of that, then you get a bit suspicious about his intentions. 2. This was around 6 years ago. I was that cringy kind of anime lover back in my teenage years. I was friends with a shit ton of neckbeards. I was not a legbeard, but rather the naive idiot who saw the neckbeards as my older brothers. I had this best friend from school, the neckbeard. Let's call him Brownie because he likes brownies. Brownie and I met during our freshman year in high school. Now, in case you get confused, the government changed the school system. My batch was one of the last group of students who graduated high school at 16. So Brownie and I were in the same class, and we made 2 more friends who are also geeks like us. And we were considered the loser squad because, we're losers. But unlike Brownie, me and the other 2 guys made friends in our class that's outside our group. Now I'm the only girl in the group, and the 3 are boys. People always asked me if I was dating one of them, which was really weird to ask a 12-year-old. The loser squad and I usually spend our free time talking about anime, video games, and these guys even inspired me to be a creative writer. The other 2 actually treated me like an equal, and I've never been so happy. But Brownie kinda treated me like I'm some damsel in distress. I honestly hated that, though I noticed that he kinda did that to every girl in our class. So me and the rest of the squad told him to lower down his creep level. It worked for the rest of the school year until he traveled to a new school the next year. Since he transferred, the rest of the squad just talked to him through text. The 2 never really had the time to meet up, so it was always me and Brownie going out. Skip to when I was in my 4th year in high school. I introduced Brownie to my childhood friend Demon. That time I was 15 and Demon was 12. Brownie instantly fell in love with Demon. I never noticed until 2 years later. This was also the time that we became an unofficial trio. I'm usually there to make sure that Brownie doesn't do anything to Demon. Brownie also got to the point where he'd buy Demon anime merch for Demon. He even bought her 2 gifts when his family went to Japan. Let's just say that he's been trying to buy her affection. Ironically, Demon only saw him as an older brother. When we graduated high school, Brownie and I met up at an anime convention where Demon couldn't come. It was then when he told me that he wanted to ask Demon out for a date. A date. He, a 17-year-old man-child, wanted to date a 14-year-old girl. And by God, I was shocked. We had a fight because of it. I told him that it was wrong, and even gave him reasons why it was wrong. When he wouldn't listen, I dropped the biggest bombshell. I told him that if he tried asking Demon out, she'll say no. Demon has a high standard when it comes to finding a partner. And he was nowhere near her top 10, let alone her bottom 10. Brownie was hurt and left me in the convention alone. The next day I found out that Brownie had blocked me on all social media and tried to badmouth me to Demon. Now at the time, Demon was stressed because she was a few days away from going to the regionals for journalism. Spoiler, she won 5th place out of 300 contestants, and I'm still proud to this day. And she literally went off on Brownie by calling him an immature a-hole for calling me a bad friend. That was 6 years ago. I heard from the grapevine that he surprisingly graduated college, and I did run into him in a grocery store 2 days before they locked down the country. He didn't recognize me, but I recognized him despite the tattoos he got. And I was shocked to see him with his pregnant girlfriend. Good on him. 3. Growing up, I never really thought of myself as attractive, even though I've been told otherwise, and I've never been asked out or even have a boyfriend. Like almost every high school student, my confidence was at rock bottom, and I really wanted a boyfriend. So when I found out from a group of friends who take earth science with me that someone from that class was interested in me, I got excited. Turns out the person who was interested in me was this junior who wore a ponytail, grew his beard out like an Amish man, and had a poor excuse for hygiene. I wasn't that thrilled after finding out, but I was always told to never judge people until you know them, and decided to give him a shot. I confronted him about it, and told him that if he wanted to go out with me, then he had to put in the effort to get to know me better. I also gave him my number so we could text. Things were fine at first. He seemed like a really decent guy. 2 weeks later, he asks if I wanted a ride home. At first I was kind of nervous about it, since my mom is very protective, and I didn't want to ride the bus that day and accepted his offer. Huge mistake! The boy's car wasn't even a car, it was more a shell of a car. It had no radio, no air conditioning, no airbags, the seatbelts were hanging on for dear life, because they were poorly installed. Said he installed them himself. The interior was missing, and the windows barely even worked. Now this wouldn't be a problem if we didn't live in the desert, and that day wasn't nearing almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I was dripping in sweat and just wanted to go home. The whole ride home this guy kept giving me weird vibes, and talked about how he wanted to take me out to dinner. I told him that I wasn't ready to go out on a date, and that he needed to meet my parents first for that. I was dropped off at home and decided to take a shower. By the time I got done, my mom came home and asked me about my day. I told her about how I got a ride home by this guy, and that he was really interested in me, though I'm not that interested in him. My mom got into mama bear mode and started asking me if I was alright, if anything else had happened, and that she didn't want this kid taking me home again. I told her I was fine, and that the kid kinda crept me out. I was also relieved that she told me not to let this kid take me home again. Cut to the next day at school. I told the kid that my mom didn't want him driving me home again, and didn't want him to date me unless she got to know him. The rest of the class I ignored him. By the end of school, he texted me asking if he could meet my mom. I told him that both my mom and dad were very busy people. Every day he would text me asking if he could meet my parents or take me home. Each time I told him no and that I wouldn't know when he could meet them. He just wouldn't stop. I told my parents that this kid wouldn't leave me alone and wouldn't stop texting me. My mom said just tell him that my parents do not want to meet him, and that if he kept bothering me, then he would have to talk to my father. So I did. I told him that I wasn't interested in him anymore, that my parents don't wish to meet him since he wouldn't get over not being able to drive me home, and if he wouldn't leave me alone then my father would have to talk to him. Dude freaked out, saying that I was being completely unfair to him, that he has been nothing but a gentleman to me, that I am obligated to go out with him, and if my father got involved then he wouldn't hesitate to bash his brains in with a bat. Self-defense, of course. My dad isn't the type of person to start a physical fight. I got scared. If this dude was willing to attack my father for preventing him from dating me, what would he do to me? I showed my mom the things he texted me, and she told me to take it to my school and have a restraining order put in place. I did exactly that, and the kid was expelled for a few days. He was also forced to sit on the opposite side of the class from me, and if he even spoke to me, then he would be permanently expelled for breaking the order. I would see him around when I was in junior year. He would always stare at me and wave, but I would pretend I didn't see him or just ignored him. I still didn't feel safe till I heard that he transferred mid-school year. After that, I didn't try to date at all in high school, and learned that I shouldn't stoop that low just to date someone because they could be a psycho, and I also finally raised my confidence enough to believe that I deserved better and that I'm an attractive woman. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my story. Sorry if it was a little vague. Like I said, it was almost 5 years ago when this happened. I just hope that younger girls don't make the same mistake as me. Edit. Found out the kid is attending the same college as me. Thank God that the college is making everyone do online classes. I couldn't handle being in another class with him again.
Four.
My Neckbeard story. Back in a time where neckbeards were not named neckbeards, but maybe weirdos, maybe social rejects, who knows? This time frame was around the year 2000 to 2001. I was a typical teenage girl in high school, not popular, not a loner, but somewhere in between. FCCLA, theater spirit club kind of student. I loved theater, and this is where I met my first, later to be named, neckbeard. We shall call him Valiant Beard, name explained later. He was a lonely fellow that was tall, near 6 foot, dark brown hair, short but not quite cleanly kept, and a full-on man-beard. I mean, this made him look like a baby-faced 40-year-old man, plus the fact that he dressed like a 40-year-old man, slacks, button-down shirts, subdued colors or plaid, comfort arch shoes, the works. If one had not known, he might have been mistaken for a science teacher. Anyway, my few interactions with him were pleasant and kind. But the cringe-worthy interactions are why we are here. First was the day I sat in theater class where I, Island Princess, was going over my English writing assignment while other kids were on stage going over their parts for a school play. I was reading aloud to my good friend Hippie Chick to get her input. While she was listening with interest, so was Valiant Beard. After I had concluded my reading and got Hippie Chick's pointers, over lumbered Valiant Beard. "Island Princess, I couldn't help but overhear your story. It was very articulate and moving. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind reading my assignment." "Sure, Valiant Beard, I can do that." That was my mistake. I vaguely remember it being a run-of-the-mill story, not horrible nor astonishing, so I gave him some feedback. I thought that was that, but day after day, he would bring me stories and poems, and anecdotes and limericks. Finally, I started avoiding Valiant Beard, but somehow he always found me in the theater. I would tell my friends what was happening. They would laugh and tell me I was too nice. I would call them jackasses. Laughter would ensue. The last time I remember him asking for a read-through, while he quite literally was chasing me through the audition auditorium yelling, "Island Princess, I need your unbiased opinion. Wait, I trust your opinion." As I was being pulled by Hippie Chick by the arm while she screamed, "Leave her alone, you freak! Go ask someone else!" Second cringe-worthy encounter, the X-Men movie had just come out, and many of us theater kids were talking about it. Valiant Beard said, "I prefer Wolverine over any of the X-Men." To that I replied, "I am disappointed they didn't include Rogue in the movie, because she is my favorite. I really like the comics and cartoon series. Rogue was a badass." Anyway, I should not have said that because Valiant Beard's eyes lit up and started talking my ear off about Wolverine. His background, how he would like to cut his hair and beard to mimic Hugh Jackman's rendition of the hero Wolverine. Even mentioned how he would dress up as Wolverine for Halloween and I should go as Rogue. I was just half listening to him going, "Uh-huh," and "yeah," as the mind-numbing conversation was carrying on and on. Fast forward to Halloween. Our Valiant Beard did indeed dress up like Wolverine, including shaping and cutting his hair and beard to look exactly like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. The look on his face when he saw me in normal school clothes could have broken the heart of the most cold, hard person on earth. He just kind of muttered something like, "Hello, Island Princess," trailing off into a whisper of, "You were supposed to be Rogue," as he sulked away. I really did feel bad for him. The last part is where he lived up to his namesake. In the theater, we were to put on the play of A Christmas Story. Complete with pink bunny pajamas and leg lamp, it was so fun. This time around, I was not in the actual play, but in the production. I built the sets with the other stage production students, and made sure everything went smoothly backstage. For those of you who know theater, you know well that there are closing night pranks. So, as I was calling the actors to their scenes and places, a group of boys disappeared on me. Almost panic-struck, I went into the boys' changing room to call the aforementioned boys to their marks. Lo and behold, the prank. The boys ran to their marks, ready to go on stage, when the well-hidden boys from the production side grabbed me, pulled me farther into the dressing room, duct-taped my arms to my sides, stood me on a stool against a metal beam and proceeded to duct tape me to the beam 3 feet off the ground, then pulling the stool out from under me. So I was just duct taped to the beam, not able to move. I was laughing hysterically to the point of crying. What I forgot to mention was Valiant Beard was also on stage crew. Since I had not come back to the side stage, he came to look for me. When he walked into the dressing room to see the group of 3 or 4 boys laughing their butts off, and seeing me red-faced and crying, remember I was laughing to the point of tears, he very gallantly yelled, "How dare you imbeciles do that to a lady? You do not treat a beautiful kind lady in such a manner." Maybe a cad was sad, but I was trying to breathe in between laughing sobs. When he said that, it made the boys laugh even harder, to the point one of them, my brother from another mother, fell on the ground laughing. Valiant Beard took it upon himself to be my savior, crossed the room over to me and started to rescue me from my sticky trap, successfully pulling out my arm hairs and freeing my arms. Before I was completely free, they had to give him the stool so I wouldn't fall 3 feet to the ground. I thanked him and scurried away to complete the closing night production. So thank you, Valiant Beard, wherever you may be, for the funny and cringe-worthy memories. Island Princess out. 5. Today's story is from my previous work in a bank branch office. This guy, let's call him Sales Beard, short for SB. SB is one typical beard in every aspect. When SB first came to our branch, he often bragged about how he was the top sales at his previous bank, that he wore a watch worth of 6 digits. When he was asked why he quit, he just says that he could not get along with his manager, which later was found that he was fired due to some unethical practice. SB claims he was born and raised in the States, but his thick accent sells him out. Nothing wrong with an accent, except himself often belittles and makes fun of customers or other co-workers who have an accent, like, "Why do these FOB, fresh off the boat, come here when they can't speak English?" Or, "That's such a turn-off, that girl. She has a nice face, but her accent is bad." Despite the fact he makes fun of customers who don't speak English or speak little, he always immediately tells me that he, and only him in the branch, speaks Mandarin, not true, when the Mandarin-speaking customer is wealthy. As sales, his job includes sales and account service after sales in order to maintain and deepen the relationship. SB, of course, does not want to do any service but sales. And if he can get away with it, he often asks the customers to go to his cubicle to open accounts. Even when customers state they have an appointment with a different representative, his response is, "Oh, we help each other. I can help you so you don't have to wait." But he never helps when the customer needs service. His response usually is, "Someone else will be with you shortly." Because of his work nature, SB must wear a suit and tie. He hardly changes his tie, and his only suit looks like it was passed on from an elder family member and never cleaned. When he was asked how come the suit looks a bit big for him, he says, "Oh yeah, I've lost a lot of weight since I bought this suit." Yeah, did you lose weight by getting shorter? Oh, and that oily hair and subtle but obvious body odor. Our office sometimes holds potlucks just for fun. Everyone participates except, you guessed it, SB. Not that he doesn't participate per se. More like he says he doesn't. When asked, his answer is always, "I don't think I will join this time, maybe next time." Which is okay, it is, after all, a non-official event, and definitely not mandatory. Except when everyone brings food and gathers together, he stands aside and talks to everyone while staring at the food. People usually tell him to grab some food and join in. And there goes his loudly chewing with his mouth open. There was this time. Everyone sits around the table, chatting. He sneezed. A sneeze that echoes in the lunchroom without covering his mouth. Everyone pushed the plate away, so no one asked. "Hey, SB, you know it's a basic human manner to cover your mouth when sneezing in today's society, right?" "Yeah, but it's scientifically proven covering your mouth with your palm literally does nothing to protect anyone from germs." "Then cover with something else like a napkin." "I'm not covering my mouth with my high-dollar suit, no, not me." Everyone leaves the room. Last but not least, SB is often late. He also often asks to leave early. When asked why, his typical excuse is, "I didn't sleep well last night." Once a business partner came in and caught him sleeping on his desk. They had a chat. That associate was not too familiar with him at that moment. We don't know that conversation, but after that, the associate went to one of our tellers and told her that she needs to avoid SB, because apparently he observes and talks about her in a very sexual and graphic way, and that is one of the reasons he doesn't sleep well at night. Ew. That's our SB. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Neckbeards in the Wild, number 43. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you yourself have a story you'd like to send in for me to read in a future video, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. And that email can be found in the description of just about every video. Let's see, this goes up on Sunday. If I haven't streamed on Saturday, we'll have our kind of gaming and chat stream tonight. If I have streamed on Saturday, there might be a little bonus stream of me doing some recording for the next few days' videos on Sunday. Haven't decided for sure yet, but we'll see. And if I do, I hope you'll join me. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.